He was more than a fighter, he was a storm. A man who moved faster than thought, who struck harder than fear, and who turned philosophy into motion. Bruce Lee wasn't just a martial artist. He was a revolution disguised as a man. He shattered bones and barriers with equal precision, uniting East and West through the language of power, speed, and spirit. His body was a weapon, but his mind was the true force, sharp, disciplined, limitless. Yet behind the legend of invincibility lay fragility. He battled discrimination, rejection, and his own mortality. He dreamed of showing the world that strength wasn't in muscle, but in mastery. And just as the world began to understand him, he was gone suddenly, mysteriously, and far too young. This is the story of Bruce Lee, the man who fought the system, defied gravity, and became eternal not because he lived long, but because he burned too brightly to fade. Bruce Lee was born on November 27, 1940, in San Francisco, California. While his father Li Hoi Chuen, a well-known Cantonese opera performer, was touring the United States. Though he was born on American soil, his life would be shaped by the struggle of belonging to two worlds, East and West. Shortly after his birth, the Lee family returned to Hong Kong, where Bruce grew up amid war occupation and unrest. The Japanese invasion of Hong Kong during World War II left scars on the city and on the boy who would later turn struggle into strength. From an early age, Bruce was restless, fiery, and fearless. He loved movement dance boxing and, above all, fighting. He often got into street brawls, testing his speed against anyone who challenged him. His mother, Grace Ho, saw both danger and potential in his energy. To channel it, she enrolled him in Wing Chun under the legendary Ip Man. Under Ip Man's guidance, Bruce found something deeper than combat. He found control. By his teenage years, Bruce had already earned a reputation as one of Hong Kong's most formidable young fighters. But his temper and rebellious nature caused trouble. After numerous street fights and police warnings, his parents decided it was time for a change. At 18, Bruce was sent back to the United States to live with family friends in Seattle, hoping he would find discipline and direction. There, between working odd jobs and attending college, he began teaching martial arts not as rigid tradition, but as living philosophy. He believed in adapting and being fluid, in stripping away the unnecessary. He would soon give this philosophy a name, Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. It wasn't just a style of fighting, it was a way of life, a rebellion against conformity. The boy who once fought in the alleys of Hong Kong had found his purpose. But the world had yet to recognize the force that was about to hit it. When Bruce Lee arrived in America in the late 1950s, he was a young immigrant with little money and big dreams. He enrolled at the University of Washington, studying philosophy by day and teaching martial arts by night. His classes attracted people from all walks of life, students, workers, even military veterans drawn to his charisma, confidence, and the lightning precision of his movements. Bruce wasn't just teaching combat, he was teaching transformation. By the early 1960s, his small dojo in Seattle had become the foundation of a new movement. He opened additional schools in Oakland and Los Angeles, spreading his method of self-expression through motion. Bruce taught that martial arts were not about memorizing forms, but about freeing the body and the mind. "Be water, my friend," he would later say, a phrase that would come to define his philosophy and his soul. In 1964, during a demonstration at the Long Beach International Karate Championships, Bruce's explosive speed and energy stunned the crowd. One man watching that day was television producer William Dozier, who saw something more than a fighter. He saw a star. Bruce was invited to audition for Hollywood, landing the role of Kato in the TV series The Green Hornet 1966. Though the show lasted only one season, Bruce's performance stole every scene. His presence on screen was electric, his movements sharper than the camera could follow. America had never seen anything like him. Yet despite his undeniable talent, Hollywood wasn't ready. Roles for Asian actors were rare, and Bruce was constantly told that audiences wouldn't accept an Asian man as a leading hero. Studios offered him stereotypical sidekick roles, but he refused to be reduced to a caricature. He turned away from the system that rejected him, determined to build his own path. By the early 1970s, Bruce returned to Hong Kong, this time not as the child who had left in trouble, but as a man with a mission. What he didn't realize was that his homecoming would make him a legend. When Bruce Lee returned to Hong Kong in 1971, he was stunned to find that the Green Hornet, though forgotten in America, had made him a star across Asia. In Hong Kong, they didn't call it the Green Hornet, they called it the Kato Show. Crowds greeted him as a hero. Film studios, once uninterested, now fought for his attention. Bruce saw an opportunity not just to make movies, but to redefine what an Asian man could be on screen. He signed with Golden Harvest, a new and ambitious Hong Kong studio, and began creating the kind of films he had always dreamed of, where martial arts weren't just fighting, but philosophy in motion. His first major hit, The Big Boss 1971, exploded across Asia, followed by Fist of Fury 1972. In these films, Bruce played not a servant or a clown, but a proud, fearless hero. A man who fought oppression and injustice with both fists and spirit. Audiences had never seen anything like it. He wasn't just an actor, he was a cultural awakening. Then came The Way of the Dragon, 1972, which Bruce wrote, directed, and starred in himself. It was his declaration of independence, his story, his way. The climactic fight scene between Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris in the Roman Colosseum became one of the most iconic battles in cinema history, symbolizing East versus West philosophy versus brute strength. It wasn't just choreography, it was art. Hollywood could no longer ignore him. Warner Brothers approached him to star in Enter the Dragon, a groundbreaking collaboration between East and West. It was everything Bruce had fought for, a film that would finally show the world the power, beauty, and intelligence of martial arts. During filming, Bruce's intensity was unmatched. He performed his own stunts, choreographed the fights, and demanded authenticity in every frame. The cast and crew could sense it. This wasn't just a movie. It was a movement. At 32 years old, Bruce Lee had become more than a star. He was a global phenomenon. He had conquered both East and West, broken racial barriers, and reshaped the world's image of strength. But behind the camera, his body was sending him warnings he refused to hear. The same energy that made him unstoppable was also consuming him. At the height of his fame, Bruce Lee seemed invincible, physically flawless, spiritually centered, and mentally untouchable. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to show. Years of relentless training, extreme dieting, and sleepless nights spent writing, choreographing, and teaching were wearing him down. He demanded absolute perfection from himself and from everyone around him. His body, though built like iron, began to rebel. Bruce's intensity bordered on obsession. He studied anatomy, psychology, nutrition, and even philosophy to push human potential beyond its limits. But in doing so, he was pushing his own body past the point of recovery. He suffered from recurring back pain from an injury sustained in 1970, forcing him to redesign his workouts and develop new methods of movement. To the world, this was evolution. To Bruce, it was survival. As he worked on Enter the Dragon, Bruce was under immense pressure. It was his breakthrough moment, a Hollywood-backed film that would define his legacy. He threw himself into it completely, choreographing every sequence, rewriting dialogue, and overseeing production details. But his intensity became self-destructive. He slept little, ate less, and trained harder than ever. Friends noticed he was thinner, quieter, and distant. His mind was alive with vision, but his body was burning out. Then came the first warning. In May 1973, while recording English dialogue for Enter the Dragon, Bruce suddenly collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital where doctors found severe cerebral edema, swelling of the brain. They treated him successfully, but he brushed it off and returned to work almost immediately. To those around him, it was terrifying. To Bruce, it was irrelevant. He believed the mind could conquer the body, that willpower could silence pain. He was wrong. The world saw a man at his peak. But those closest to him saw something else, a man chasing perfection so hard that he was running out of time. On July 20th, 1973, just weeks before the release of Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee's unstoppable momentum came to an abrupt and mysterious end. That afternoon, he was in Hong Kong at the apartment of actress Betty Ting Pei, discussing a new film project titled Game of Death. He complained of a headache, took a painkiller called Equagesic, and lay down to rest. He never woke up. When attempts to revive him failed, Bruce Lee was pronounced dead at Queen Elizabeth Hospital. He was only 32 years old. The official cause was cerebral edema, swelling of the brain, the same condition that had nearly killed him 2 months earlier. But the circumstances of his death immediately sparked controversy. How could a man at the peak of physical perfection simply die? Rumors spread like wildfire: heat stroke, allergic reaction, foul play. Even curses from the martial arts world. Some whispered that he had been poisoned, others that he had been punished for revealing Chinese martial secrets to the West. The more people searched for answers, the deeper the mystery grew. News of his death sent shockwaves across the globe. In Hong Kong, thousands filled the streets weeping openly. In America, fans refused to believe it. How could Bruce Lee, the symbol of strength, the embodiment of energy, be gone? The film industry mourned not just a superstar, but a force of nature that had changed cinema forever. When Enter the Dragon premiered a few weeks later, it was both triumph and tragedy. The movie became a global phenomenon, earning more than any martial arts film in history. Bruce's charisma burned through the screen as if defying death itself. But for his wife Linda and his 2 children Brandon and Shannon, the success felt hollow. The man they loved had given everything to the world, and the world had taken him too soon. Bruce Lee's body was buried in Seattle, the city where his American journey began. His gravestone bears 5 simple words: "Your inspiration continues to guide us," but his death was more than an ending. It was a spark that ignited a movement, one that would ripple through generations of fighters, philosophers, and dreamers. Bruce Lee's death did not silence his voice, it amplified it. The shock of his passing sent a tremor through the worlds of film philosophy and martial arts. He had been more than a man. He was a symbol of what human potential could become when discipline met imagination. And yet his death, at just 32, left behind a haunting question. What if he had lived in Hong Kong? His funeral drew tens of thousands of mourners. Fans lined the streets, clutching photos, weeping openly as his golden coffin was carried through the crowd. In the West Enter, the Dragon transformed him from a regional icon into a global legend. For many, Bruce was the first Asian face to stand as an equal among Western heroes, a fighter, a thinker, and a philosopher who spoke in motion rather than words. His body was gone, but his ideas began to spread faster than ever before. Jeet Kune Do, once dismissed as rebellion, became a philosophy embraced by martial artists around the world. Bruce's teachings on adaptability, simplicity, and self-expression transcended fighting. They became a way of life. He had once said, "Absorb what is useful, discard what is not, add what is uniquely your own." That message of freedom through discipline became his eternal legacy. His impact extended beyond martial arts. He broke Hollywood's racial barriers and redefined what it meant to be powerful on screen. He made vulnerability look strong, intellect look fierce, and spirituality look physical. Generations of actors, athletes, and thinkers, from Jackie Chan to Jet Li, from Stallone to Will Smith, would name him as their inspiration. Even modern combat sports, from MMA to boxing, still echo his principles of efficiency and flow. But perhaps Bruce's greatest influence wasn't on fighters, it was on seekers. He taught the world that mastery was not about domination, but about harmony. To know oneself was the ultimate victory. His life became a mirror, short, intense, and impossibly bright. And yet tragedy would visit his family once more. 2 decades later, his son Brandon Lee, who had followed in his father's footsteps as an actor, was killed in a freak on-set accident while filming The Crow. Like his father, he died young in his prime under mysterious circumstances. For millions, it felt as if the Lee family was touched by both destiny and curse. Bruce Lee's legacy is not measured by the years he lived, but by the barriers he destroyed. His fists may have stopped moving, but his philosophy still breathes in every soul that dares to challenge limits. Bruce Lee's life was a paradox, a man who sought harmony, but lived in constant motion, who conquered the world, but was never allowed to stay in it for long. He was not just a martial artist, not just an actor, and not even just a philosopher. He was all of them fused into one unstoppable force that redefined what it means to be alive with purpose. He once said, "The key to immortality is first living a life worth remembering." And in 32 short years, he did exactly that. His story wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about freedom. Freedom from tradition, from limitation, from fear. Bruce believed that to truly live, one must be fluid, adaptable, and honest with oneself, like water shaping its path through resistance. Every punch he threw was a lesson in discipline. Every word he spoke was a challenge to think deeper. Every movement was a reflection of philosophy in motion. He taught that mastery wasn't about defeating others, it was about defeating one's own ego. And though his body is gone, his message endures because it was never about him. It was about what humanity could become. Today his image is everywhere on murals, in gyms, in hearts. Children still mimic his moves, teachers still quote his wisdom, fighters still train in his shadow. Yet perhaps the true tribute to Bruce Lee isn't imitation, it's evolution. To move forward, to think freely, to live boldly, that is his final lesson. He was lightning in human form, too fierce for this world, too brief to be contained. But even storms fade into legend. Bruce Lee didn't die at 32. He simply became immortal. Because legends don't rest. They live on in every heartbeat that dares to defy the impossible.